Welcome here to a very special wake-up call with Dan Tortora. We are hanging out with you in the Sunshine State of Florida. It is the second home of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Everybody knows that. And so I'm very happy to be here. I miss you, Central and Upstate New York, but I love and I'm happy to be here in the Sunshine State. And we are here all week long. This is our Tuesday special. And here on a beautiful Tuesday, I feel very honored and privileged to be here with my buddy and my pal, and someone I consider a brother, someone I met in the sports world, and someone who's been on both sides of it, from the public relations and on the media side. And so here on Tuesday, February 23rd, from the Sunshine State, Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora proudly presents to you our one-on-one uninterrupted conversation with Jason Lucas. Jay Bird, how are we doing?
Good, Dan. What's going on? Beautiful day down here in Florida.
Yeah, it's awesome. And to be here, February 23rd, it's a beautiful thing. It's a great week. And I'm excited to be here because it's only 70 to 80, maybe 100 degrees warmer than it is in Syracuse. And so it's really good. Now you and I, before we started the video, we had to make sure that our shirts looked right.
Yes.
So your
of course.
CF is visible. And people can't see all of mine, but I have to show this. I got this in Disney. So it says often imitated, but never duplicated. So this is my way of, kind of saying there's only one Dan Tortora, and also telling the people in the media that listen to my show and then write articles for their paper, you're welcome for putting food on your table tonight. So
like today, I just rubbed the lamp and here you were.
You're like, you know what? Enough of this. I need Dan.
Yeah, we gotta have another go at this.
Right, and I appeared, so I'm here and I'm happy to be here. You and I were talking in the past about who would be the coach of UCF, and it gets announced that Guz Malzahn is now the head coach of UCF. The irony of it is that UCF, in a game that they were told they didn't belong in, they played against Auburn. They defeated Auburn, and the coach at the time was Guz Malzahn, who is now the head coach of UCF, as it has come full circle. I guess if you can't beat them, you do have to join them.
How about that, man? I didn't even have words when I heard the news that Guz Malzahn is coming to Orlando. Guz Malzahn, who was the coach at Tulsa in 2007 when they played against UCF in the conference championship game, and another loss for Gus against UCF. But that day in Atlanta was a special day that UCF was able to take over in the second half of that football game and get that win over Guz Malzahn, as you said, and Auburn. And a big win with the national championship claim, which he was also asked about in the press conference. So, it's amazing to even think full circle. He's here, and he's excited to be here. And he says he's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Well, and, good news to hear. He was at Arkansas State in 2012. He went 9-3. And then he's been in Auburn ever since, from 2013 to 2020. At Auburn, he has an overall record of 68-35, and he, in his first season at Auburn, was 12-2, then 8-5, 7-6, 8-5, 10-4, 8-5, 9-4, and in his shortened season, 6-4. He has not had a losing record from 2012 to 2020, and he has been to numerous bowl games. He's been to 7 bowl games in his time at Auburn, and I guess in the bowls, that's where it's different, though. He won the Music City Bowl and the Birmingham Bowl, but he lost the BCS championship in 2013, and from there lost the Outback Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, and the Peach Bowl, and the Outback Bowl again in 2019. So kind of interesting here. He hasn't had a losing record, but he hasn't had a great record in bowl season. What are your thoughts about what UCF is getting?
UCF's getting a coach that seems like he's motivated. He was sitting at home, as he said in the press conference. He was sitting at home, and he looked at himself for 8 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it was, and kind of decided that when he saw Josh Heupel head off to Tennessee, that was going to be the job that he wanted to get. He gets the phone call and ends up taking the job for UCF. We're getting a coach that's excited to be here. I think that's the number one thing that the fan base wanted. We want a coach who wants to be here and wants to fight the battle that we're fighting, and not just be here and be like a plant that's working against us, So I think a lot of the fan base wanted a coach that was younger. There was the cry for Jeff Lebby, the offensive coordinator at Ole Miss. It didn't work out for him to come here. They didn't really get into specifics of what happened and why he wasn't the way they wanted to go.
Yeah.
But Guz Malzahn, I think, is in that same point of his career like George O'Leary when he came to UCF. He's looking for that one last job, something to prove, and to get back at those guys that, they let him go there at Auburn, where he had actually, like you said, done very respectable the last few years. So I think he's excited to be at UCF, and I think he's going to do a great job. A lot of great players are going to be there, and they're excited to have him as well.
Well, I think what the cool thing is ultimately is there's always this concern in the American that the coaches are going to get poached to, the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, and so on and so forth, because, the Power 5 doesn't want to call itself a Power 6. However, they poach the coaches from the 6th conference all the time, repeatedly. Tried to allegedly maybe poach some of the schools a couple of years ago when the Big 12 was allegedly thinking about it, and thank God they didn't for the American. And, but every single year we're seeing coaches get picked up from the American Athletic Conference, or at least asked to be picked up. The Mike Norvells, the Justin Fuentes, the Scott Frost, the Charlie Strongs, and so on and so forth. They have continuously, Josh Heupel now, Ken Niumatalolo had the opportunities and decided to stay at Navy. The Jeff Collins, the Steve Adazios, the, Matt Rules that are now with the Carolina Panthers. That, in the entire time that we have seen the American Athletic Conference, they have definitely been a hotbed of coaches that are desirable. What do you think about it going the other way now?
Oh, well, I'll tell you, I put it to a friend just like this. If somebody was going to pull this in reverse, I'm glad it was us and not somebody else. And it's crazy that it's happened this way because of who Guz Malzahn is and the full circle of he played against us when he was at Tulsa. He played against us when he was at Auburn, and we beat him both times, and now he's with us. Terry Mohajir, the new AD at UCF, mentioned that he got over 650 text messages from coaches. I think there are coaches all over the country, as that proves, that wanted to come to Orlando and to this hotbed of recruiting. I mean, this place is where it's at as far as recruiting. There are recruits all over this place, 4-star, 5-star kids that they might want to stay home, but maybe Josh Heupel, and this was a knock on Heupel, he didn't want to get out and recruit these kids that are close to home. I don't know what it was. We had a kid at Seminole High School right here around the corner that I was watching. Kid by the name of Jimmy Horn that's going to USF now that Josh Heupel just wasn't even watching, wasn't paying attention to, and now UCF's got to play him the next 4 years. So I think the knocks on Heupel are what Malzahn's looking to come in here and change. He talked about not wanting to go any further than 6 hours from Central Florida to find out a lot of the talent that he's going to bring in. So I think that's exciting for the fan base as well to hear that the coach isn't looking to, go other places and try to recruit these other areas. He wants to recruit right here in the Sunshine State and bring home a winner to UCF and bring us back to what we were just a few years ago.
Yeah, and I think that it's so cool to see something like this come together. And like you said, I mean, what coach would not want to have this job at UCF? You're at the largest campus in America. You are in the center of what some consider to be the best state of the 50 when it comes to recruiting, above California, above Texas, above Oklahoma, above Kansas, above you name it, Ohio, and so on and so forth. So above Georgia and the Carolinas. So to see this, come to fruition that Guz Malzahn ends up there, it's for people to believe. I guess people with small minds and, with small minds that seem to follow the leader, they may not think about this, but if you look at the state of Florida and you say, okay, well, Florida recruits Florida, Georgia, North Carolina recruits Florida, New York, Pennsylvania recruits Florida, Ohio recruits Florida, California, Washington, Texas, Kansas recruits Florida, Massachusetts recruits Florida. If you're in the center of the state, right by Disney World, right by Universal Studios, right by all of this amusement, you're in the amusement mecca of the country, to some people of the world with Walt Disney World, right at the center of it with all these kids, all these high schools, all these things to do. Typically you have the Pro Bowl there as well. Then it makes perfect sense. Why wouldn't you want to be a coach at the largest university in the country in the mecca of amusement in the center of the best state for recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason I could think of that any coach wouldn't have wanted to come take this job. Like I said, there was messages that Terry got, and he was kind of fighting off the coaches to get his list down. I think when it comes right down to it, there's not a bigger name out there right now than Guz Malzahn that you could have brought into UCF and gotten the front page headline news of Guz Malzahn, former Auburn coach, is taking his talents to Orlando. He had mentioned that, there were a couple other hires he could have made that wouldn't have made that front page news. And I don't think it's about that. I think it's a winning move. It's more of a move of, hey, we need to win right now. And this is the guy that can come in. He's got the experience. He's recruited Florida all throughout his career. I remember seeing him recruit Florida when he was at Apopka one night, checking out Chandler Cox, who's with the Dolphins now, and went to Auburn, played against UCF in that Peach Bowl too. Just seeing him here in person, not one of his coordinators, that's something that leaves an impression upon people. And something that left an impression upon me is, dang, this guy's really serious about his recruiting. He's not sending his assistants or anybody else to check out this guy that he just signed. He's excited about it. And to me now, when he's going to be here, and this is going to be his backyard, he's going to put a fence around the 407 and the 321 and just put a fence around it and say, these are our guys and you're not taking them. So I'm excited to have a coach that, number one, wants to be here, but number two, is going to bring in those kids that I'm watching on Friday night that are going to be UCF stars of the future.
Yeah, and in the SEC, we say it all the time, joke about it, but there's a reality to it. Les Miles was fired for having an 81% winning percentage because he lost 3 games in a row. So we know that the SEC, we know Chad Morris left SMU after finally getting them back to a bowl season. It felt like SMU had been nothing since they had the death penalty in 1985. And they got all the way back. He goes to Arkansas. He's let go. And, we've seen things like that happen. And how the SEC, you go to the SEC, your job is to beat everybody in front of you, including Alabama. And, Florida has struggled. Georgia has struggled. Auburn has struggled. Everybody, Arkansas and so on and so forth have all struggled. Texas A&M, or not Texas A&M, Texas A&M. So I get confused with all the Texases down there. There's like 450 Texas schools. But the reality of it all is that, when you go to the SEC, an 81% winning percentage is not good enough. If you beat everybody in the SEC except for Alabama, it's not good enough. If you win almost all your games, don't play in the SEC championship, it's not good enough. If you don't win a national championship, it's not good enough. Coaches get fired in the SEC in such a way that if they were in any other conference, including the ACC, including the Pac-12 and so on, there are coaches in the SEC that if they had the same record doing the same thing in the Pac-12 would be coaching at Washington for 12 years. The SEC is a different world, and they let Guz Malzahn go at Auburn after he put together a record of 68-35 with a 39-27 record in SEC play. He's winning almost twice as many times as when he's losing when it comes to overall play, and he's got 39 wins to 27 losses in the SEC, and that wasn't good enough. I'm hearing if he's hitting that in the SEC, he should be able to handle what's going on elsewhere because the SEC is the best conference in the country.
Well, yeah, and I think you're exactly right hitting on that point about the SEC West. Specifically, it's the toughest conference to come out of in America because you have to beat Alabama, whether you beat them in the championship game or the regular season and knock them out of that championship game. They're the toughest team in the country to beat on a consistent basis, and he did it a couple times. Actually, took Saban and beat Saban. So for that, that to me is something that's exciting to have him as a head coach to say, hey, this guy was in the SEC West and he went against some really tough teams and came out on top more often than he didn't. So to me, the knock on him obviously is that he didn't win this game or that game, or that his record isn't good enough to stay at this SEC school, whatever it was. Yeah, that they let him go. And I thought during the pandemic, a lot of coaches, struggled for this or that reason. UCF, Heupel struggled because half our defense goes out and gets in trouble on a whatever night that was and gets kicked off the team. So the defense wasn't very good. I thought it wasn't right that a lot of people were calling for Heupel to get fired, but then he ends up leaving anyway.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I thought coaches shouldn't have been held accountable during the pandemic for losing games, because the games themselves were crazy. I don't know how many games you got to, but like in those empty stadiums, it's really tough to actually keep yourself going, to keep that energy. Because when people take it out of context, that 70 to 80,000 people that are in some of those stadiums, especially in the SEC, they bring so much energy to the players. And when you don't take that into account, you do see a lot of comebacks. And I think this season, more than any other season that's passed, there were a lot of comebacks where the road teams came back because there wasn't that home field, that extra energy from the home team.
Yeah.
I think it happened. We saw it happen at UCF. Tulsa came back. They were down by like 18 points and came back on us. It can happen, man. It can happen. And I think, like I said, they shouldn't have been held accountable, but I'm so glad that Auburn held their coach accountable when they shouldn't have, because now he's in Orlando. So it's exciting for me, and I'm just glad that it happened that way.
Yeah, we looked at it once again. He was fired on December 13th of 2020, 68-35 overall, 39-27 in SEC play. He brought the Auburn Tigers to the national championship game in his first year there in 2000. They won 10 games and made an SEC championship game appearance in 2017. And we look at the fact that he also, during his time, he was 8-17 against Alabama, Georgia, and LSU. But since the start of the 2013 season, Nick Saban and Alabama are 65-6 against SEC opponents. 3 of those losses are to Guz Malzahn and Auburn. So of the 6 losses that Nick Saban's had in SEC play since 2013, have that tutelage and that teaching there at quote, I'm thrilled to be. It's exciting to be hitting the ground running in terms of getting to know our team and everyone else connected with UCF. Our goal is to be ready to win championships, plural. Thoughts on the fact that Nick Saban doesn't lose much, but when he does, half of it was to Guz Malzahn.
Well, I think that's part of their, rivalry in the state of Alabama. As far as, they were rivals in recruiting. They were, head to head on bringing kids in. And, they were rivals right up to the end of some of the games. That kick six happens. I think that got them a championship game appearance. So, I mean, you never know what's going to happen. I think the signature of the Guz Malzahn team is the good defense and the offense that runs the football effectively. I think, they had Kerryon Johnson a couple of years ago, and he didn't perform up to what they needed him to do that day. And they weren't able to run the ball, grind the clock, and, keep UCF's potent offense off the field. I think that's a big thing for UCF to get going. Once Malzahn's hit the ground running, he's got to get – Ventavious Thompson's going to be the starting running back this year. He's got to get him going, and that's going to be a big part of their offense, setting up for that Dylan Gabriel firing the ball down the field. It's going to be a big part of what UCF's going to be doing, and then whoever's running the defense, they haven't hired a defensive coordinator yet. The Shannon quote during the interview, the presser, sounded like he was going to be out the door more than anything to me. So it's not going to be Randy Shannon running the defense at UCF. I think that there's a lot of talent on that side of the ball for UCF, and eventually they will get that together and get that back where it was a few years ago.
Yeah, and it's a really beautiful thing to see that this team at UCF is getting such a name. The national spotlight is back on UCF and was on them with Scott Frost. It left a little bit after Josh Heupel had gone undefeated his first season there, and now it seems to be swinging back. How strange was it for you? You brought it up before, speaking here with Jason Lucas in our Florida in Focus special, as Wake Up Call has landed in the Sunshine State. And you can use those hashtags, Wake Up Call everywhere, Wake Up Call OTR, or Wake Up Call on the road. We use them. You should use them as well. Florida in Focus. We're in focus here of the state of Florida. Why wasn't Josh Heupel focused on Florida?
I don't know, man. That was the one thing that frustrated, like I said, it frustrated a lot of people because you're watching the kids he's bringing in and almost none of them were from here. And then you're watching, for me especially, I'm watching the talent on Friday nights in this area, and I'm not seeing the UCF coaches out there. There was a time under the Scott Frost era that, those coaches were out there, and not, under Heupel, for whatever reason, he wasn't recruiting the local area like he should have been. And I feel like he had a good enough relationship with the coaches where a lot of the coaches in this area, and if you travel around Central Florida on a Friday night, you will find 5, 6, 7 teams in this area running that UCF no huddle, snapping the ball early in the play clock, making the other team, not even be able to change. So they definitely were copying the offense, but you didn't see that local athlete head to UCF very often. There was only a handful that I could even name that ended up there and that are still there.
And it seemed like when Scott Frost was here that was a pipeline, that was just normal status quo business. Why not do it? I remember sitting with him when he got the job, sitting with him in Rhode Island, and he said some things to me on the air and off the air. The off the air stuff stays with me, and the on the air stuff, just talking to me about the process of figuring out where he wanted to go. And on the air stuff was, he said, he's like he came in and they hosted an event on campus, and there was something like 100 kids that showed up in the beginning of Scott Frost. That's how excited they were at the opportunity. And to me, he always knew how big, how good he had it, so to speak.
Yeah, I think Frost was very excited to take the job. It was his first head coaching job. I think the fan base was excited to have him because we had often, for many, many years, suffered through that George O'Leary offensive run the ball up the middle and only throw when you have to kind of offense that finally he abandoned in 2013 when we got a little better and won the Fiesta Bowl. But, I think Frost was super excited to be here, and I think he was excited to recruit the area. Brings in a guy like Adrian Killins, the fastest man in college football for 4 years.
Yeah.
And you haven't had that hit recently. And like I said, Heupel, didn't show the interest in the area to even come look at some of the kids. You didn't see him out there. So
was that one of the kids screaming to try and get Heupel's attention just now?
Yeah, probably. There's always screaming going on in this house, man. I was hoping you couldn't hear it with the headset.
No, you're fine. It helps the ambiance of what we're doing here, right? Birds, palm trees moving in the wind, child screaming.
Child screaming, yeah, Florida.
Yeah, Florida man. You know what I mean? There's all about the Florida man. So, to see this run of George O'Leary, Scott Frost, Josh Heupel, Guz Malzahn, how would you describe it?
I think it says something for the brand when you're bringing in head coaches that people have heard of. And that's something Terry Mohajir also mentioned in the presser. He said, I could have hired these other guys, but not necessarily everybody would have known them. And you definitely wouldn't go on ESPN.com and see it on the front page like it was today, or you wouldn't turn on SportsCenter and be like, oh, hey, UCF brought in Jeff Lebby. No, that wasn't going to be the news. And so, to me, they've always brought in guys that you've heard of. Obviously, Josh Heupel was a Heisman Trophy guy. Scott Frost is a Heisman Trophy, national championship guy. So you bring in those talented guys. Actually, Heupel won a national championship too. I don't know what I'm saying. But anyways, you bring in these guys that you've heard of and guys that, that brings in money.
Yeah.
That brings in money. That brings in season ticket holders. That brings excitement around the program. And in Orlando, like you said, there's a million things to do here. Disney and all them other things to do here. So UCF is fighting for that entertainment dollar, tooth and nail.
Yeah.
And I think at the end, if Lebby was one of the guys they wanted to bring in, and I'm not saying anything because this isn't like a rumor or anything, but he wasn't the guy that got the job. So I think at the end, if there was a decision to be made between the two, it's Guz Malzahn's going to help bring that money in. He's a people person. He brings in that interest. I don't think Lebby was that guy. I think Lebby's a great coach, but I don't think that necessarily he was that guy that was going to go talk to your boosters, or he was that guy that was going to go, in front of a bunch of people and talk. I didn't get that feeling when he was here, like he was very comfortable in front of the media. And that's okay. That's okay to be a coach that's like that. And that's how you're going to be a coordinator for a long time as well, because you don't want to get in front of the media like the head coach does. And Malzahn, I think that presence he had today at the presser, not today, whatever day that was last week, the presence he had at the presser was something that won over a lot of people that were like, I don't know about this guy. But I feel like a lot of the fan base was definitely won over by what he said at the press conference.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that Terry Mohajir and Guz Malzahn kind of crossed paths already 3 months after Terry Mohajir was named the Arkansas State athletic director back in 2012. He had to replace Guz Malzahn, who left for Auburn. So he came in, and 3 months after being in, Gus leaves his school, and now he's here making the decision to bring Gus into his school. This is truly irony, and it's truly full circle.
Yeah, those full circle moments are great, man. And I couldn't be more excited for the two of them to get things going. I think as a program, UCF is on the rise. The basketball team a couple years ago was extremely good. Earlier this year, they upset Florida State on the road. So basketball's looking good. Baseball's on its way up. They were hot right when the pandemic struck and canceled the season. I think they were ranked like 10th in the country or something like that. So it's coming for UCF, for the AD, for the football team. I think they're going to come back around and they're going to be very solid again, and they're going to be a tough out for anybody who gets on the field with them. And as Guz Malzahn said, hey, let's go to the parking lot and play. I don't care who we play. We'll play them and beat them in the parking lot. I do not care who we play. So whether it's 2 for 1, 1 for 1, whatever it's going to be, UCF's ready to get on the field as far as the head coach is concerned, and that's an exciting thing.
So with Terry Mohajir now the AD, and with Guz Malzahn the head coach, is it time to reopen the door to the SEC and say Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, we'll 2 for 1, well, whatever we got to do. But, are we in a place right now where Gus having a connection to the SEC and a desire to obviously probably make them feel his presence, and Terry Mohajir having this, and now this being a new chapter, it's funny how you go to like in my case, I might go to a restaurant, right? And there's a GM there. And I say, hey, let's work together. And we talk about stuff, but he wants this and that, and I think it's too much, or he wants this cheap, or whatever it may be. And I go, you know what, I'm good. But then that same restaurant, somebody says to me, hey, they got a new GM. Why don't you go over there and talk to him? And how many times has that changed? So this Florida UCF conversation happened recently, but no Danny White, no Josh Heupel. Is there, in your opinion, the opportunity that in this new chapter to say, if you're Terry Mohajir and if you're Guz Malzahn, to say, call Alabama, call Ohio State, call Georgia, call Florida State, see what they say?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think for the non-P5 teams, the P6 teams, whatever you want to call them, those are the money games. And that's how South Florida has scheduled the last few years. They've taken on a Notre Dame and been blown out 59-0 or whatever it was. You got to be careful. You have to be judicious with all of those. And you have to make the numbers match. You have to make where the game is happening match, whether it's a home and home or a neutral, because there's a lot of neutral games these days.
Yeah.
You've got to make everything match. And I think for UCF, the important thing is making sure that you're, maybe you get on the field with Alabama, but you want that to be a home game. You don't want to go there. You want to be here. It's not going to happen that way every time. So you're going to have to take the 2 for 1 or the 3 for 1 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Just to get one of those games at your place. You're going to have to take those money games, and you're going to have to build the program that way. And that's how UCF built the program in the past. They used to be the anytime, any place team. And I think they'll eventually get back to that. And I think Terry Mohajir is somebody who is going to, not back down from any of those challenges. And as long as the numbers match and they're not getting taken advantage of, they're not paying a ton of money to go on the road, they're getting money to go on the road, they'll take those opportunities and they'll take on all comers. And it'll be, knock them down, drag them out football games that UCF will definitely have a chance to win in the end.
Yeah, and I think, having Gus Malzahn, who's spent so much time in the SEC, what do you think that does as far as his ability to coach against it? Especially, I mean, he's coming from it most recently. It's not like it happened 3 years ago, 7 years ago, 10 years ago, still matter. But the coaches that are in there, the Jimbo Fishers and the Dan Mullins and the Nick Sabans of the world, like he's seen them. He knows what's going on. So what do you think about Gus Malzahn having, whether he's beaten them or not, that he's got the film on these guys? He knows these coaches, he knows what they're running, and he knows the pedigree that they bring in, and he knows the talent that they already have there. What does that do for UCF?
Well, the familiarity. I mean, with any team he's going to play at that level, the familiarity is going to be huge. The scene will never be too big for him personally. And he'll be able to articulate to the kids what they're about to face, and let them know that it might not be as big a deal as you might think it is. 17, 18, 19-year-old kids going on the road, you just never know what you're going to get from them. But it's nice to know that from the head coaching perspective, that he's seen it and he's won in it and he knows what to expect. So that factor is huge anytime that they're going to, whether it be at home or going on the road, especially, that the coach isn't going to panic. I think that's a huge thing for him as well as for the kids, just to know that, hey, coach isn't going to panic. Coach isn't going to let the moment be too big for him. And then also, just him being who he is and where he's been, he's hoping that's going to get that door open to possible playoff appearances and things like that. Just getting the doors open that haven't been opened in the past by the previous coaches.
And I mean, he's obviously going to be a voice. He's going to be a voice for the American now. He's going to be a voice for UCF. And that hopefully will be helpful for them, that he'll be able to speak from that and say, listen, I played in the SEC. I mean, you heard what Dana Holgorsen said when he came over from the Big 12 in West Virginia. He goes, I've played these teams. I've seen these teams. This is not a non-power. This is not a group of five. This is a tough conference to play. He told me, he's like, I respected this conference from afar for a long time, and now I'm in it. So I think, having the Holgersens and having the Malzahns come into this, having been in the quote-unquote Power Five, and saying, listen, we don't like playing these guys, and, we respected them from the outside. We didn't really understand why they weren't getting the respect. Now we're representing them. Coaches doing that, doing the opposite, coming in from the Power Five to the American, I think bodes well, and obviously hopefully give some hope to, the American Athletic Conference, especially with these coaches saying from the outside, I respect you. From the inside, I respect you. So from both angles, I think you guys are worth it, and you're worth the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like upside down world talking about a coach coming from the SEC to the American.
Are we in the upside down? Did we flip? Yeah. Did we flip over from?
Are we at Wonderworks right now?
We could be.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's how it feels. It just feels like weird having a head coach from the SEC say, all right, well, I got fired in the SEC, so I'm just going to go to this great school in the American and try to make my name there and build something special. I think that's a huge deal. And that sets a precedent for other coaches who are, losing jobs at higher levels and higher levels. But I think it's a huge deal that Gus Malzahn made the decision to be so excited about UCF when he, like he mentioned, he could have gone into TVs, taken a year off, gone to the beach or whatever. But now he's here in Orlando. The beach is only 40 minutes away. It's over by where I work in Daytona. So honestly, he doesn't have to go very far to enjoy himself. And I think it's a huge deal, for the money aspect of UCF, for the funding, for getting these projects done that they've had going, like the Lazy River and things like that. So I couldn't be more excited for him to be at UCF. And I think it's just a big, big deal, the fact that he came from an SEC school and is now going to be the head coach at UCF, fighting for us and not against us.
Yeah, and being the coach that came after we heard that, UCF beat Auburn because Auburn was tired and they didn't want to play and yada, yada. Well, obviously, Gus doesn't feel that way, because Gus, if he didn't respect the school, wouldn't be showing up here. So, the coach that got beat by UCF is now looking to beat teams with UCF. Like I said, if you can't beat them, join them. that definitely says something to me. And that year that UCF beat Auburn was the year that Auburn was the only team to beat Alabama and Georgia, who played in the national championship. So, and I would think Auburn would want to beat the heck out of anybody at that point because they were so disrespected to not even be included in the college football playoff after beating both of those teams. So, I think it's a great opportunity. It's a great thing to see. I'm excited about it. And I think, again, it puts a spotlight there. It's something unique. I'm sure Mike Horesco, someone I'm very close with, the commissioner, I'm sure that he was, waking up in the 11th hour, like, when you wake up at like 3, whatever in the morning and they call it the witching hour. And, his, instead of a nightmare, was this like, is this dream real? And, it definitely is. So it's a beautiful, beautiful thing for the American Athletic to get it. I'm happy for Mike. I'm happy for UCF. I'm happy for Terry. I'm happy for, Gus. I'm happy for everybody involved because now we look back to UCF. We look back to this opportunity. And, I think Josh Heupel this is not me wishing bad on him. This is my feeling about the situation. I think he's going to feel it in Tennessee like Scott Frost is feeling it in Nebraska and like Chad Morris felt it in Arkansas. Sometimes that grass ain't great. This is what I believe. And I know it's a quote from somebody else somewhere else, but I believe this. The grass is not greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it.
Yeah. Man, you're not kidding. The grass is greener where you water it. And I think Heupel saw an opportunity there and jumped. I think Frost, as time has proved, he needed to go be with his family. His father passed away just this past year. And I think in his mind, he knew things like that were looming on his life, not necessarily on his coaching career.
Right. And he was returning home. He was going to his alma mater, so.
Exactly. His parents basically told him to come home, and that was something that he couldn't turn away at the time. And believe it or not, there were times during this coaching search that UCF fans were like, hey, maybe Scott Frost will come back. And, I don't know how that would be recepted if he ever did come back. But I think at this point, it's way too soon in his career to come right back to UCF. I had talked about Sean Beckton for this job, the tight ends coach at Nebraska, big UCF guy, went to UCF all 4 years of his college career, wide receiver, all-star player, and coached at UCF for 20 years. So that was somebody that I would have definitely considered for the job just because he is what you would consider. If you looked up UCF guy in the dictionary, It would be Sean Beckton would be the guy. So, I think UCF made out great with Guz Malzahn. It's something that when I heard the news, I just stopped what I was doing and was like, oh my God, I cannot even believe this is happening right now because, like I said, it's upside down world. Yeah, and I didn't think we had a shot.
I think it was funny, too, because when you and I had talked about this before, I saw him on the list that somebody had written, and we didn't even talk about it. Yeah. And, it's one of those things that I'm so excited for UCF, like I said, and I'm looking forward to it. To get to some big picture stuff here with Jason Lucas in Florida in Focus, Wake Up Call down in Florida. Hashtag Wake Up Call everywhere. Wake Up Call OTR. Wake Up Call on the road.
See the
sun?
Sun is shining.
That's something. See, when I see a bright light like that come through the window, I'm getting abducted is what I think is happening. That's what I use. Or the moon is reflecting off of the snow in my backyard to like that, very by that luminescent way. But,
right.
The big picture of it all is where does the American go from here? We've talked about this before, but kind of just big picture place it. I'm gonna go down the line here, okay? And I'm gonna build this backwards, kind of Tarantino this thing a little bit. I'm gonna build it up and let you take it. So what I'm going to start with here is kind of just this is what the American Athletic has. This is what it looks like. So with Guz Malzahn joining UCF, we have Luke Fickell in Cincinnati. We have Philip Montgomery in Tulsa. We have at SMU, we have Sonny Dykes. And as we continue to go through this, we have Ken Niumatalolo that is at Navy, my favorite name in college football, maybe my favorite name in America. Ryan Silverfield is at Memphis coming off of his first season there. They had success under Justin Fuente, under Mike Norvell, and they've already had it under Silverfield. And then we look at Houston with Dana Holgorsen. We look at Tulane with Willie Fritz. We look at East Carolina with Mike Houston. We look at Temple with Rod Carey. And we now, look at South Florida, who this season, like you said, I mean, obviously they've been recruiting. They've been doing their thing. And then Jeff Scott coming over from Clemson to try and build up USF. So as we see all these names, the Jeff Scotts and the Holgersens and the Niumatalolos and the Malzahns and so on and so forth, what does that pedigree mean to the American Athletic? What does it say about the American?
Well, the quality of play is just as good as what you're seeing at 3:30 on ABC or whatever, ACC teams and whatnot. It's the same quality. They're getting the same quality of coaching. The athlete may not be the same quality right the second he walks on campus, but he'll get better because of the coaching. And I think that's a huge thing that people don't even take into account when they make blind statements like the American is it's not as good as a Power 5 conference. You guys couldn't even compete. Well, our coaches have been there. And if they haven't been there, your school's probably getting ready to hire him when they fire this guy for going 63-36 over 8 seasons or whatever,
Yeah.
It says a lot to me that the coaches have been places that they know how to play when they play the big boys, because every year they're there, and they're playing in those big high-profile games, playing them close, and they're all tough outs. Every last one of them from Memphis on down, they're all tough outs. Cincinnati's a tough out. Those are good football teams. UCF, every year when they play somebody from a bigger conference, they give them the game or they beat the heck out of them, as they did at Georgia Tech last year. So you really can't tell me that it's not the same, or that they don't have the same money, but they take that money and they bring in these great coaches, and they take these kids and make them great football players. And as we've seen, great pro football players too. They take them to the next level.
And I'm looking at even what's coming up here. Cincinnati with Luke Fickell is playing at Indiana and at Notre Dame this upcoming season. Seeing something like that at Indiana, at Notre Dame, we obviously know that Navy plays Air Force and Army, and they'll play Notre Dame. So we'll get to, see those things again. We know that Houston is playing the likes of Texas Tech this year, which is going to be huge. I like the TCU SMU game that's going to be going on. So, we talk about the non-conference schedule and they say, well, the American doesn't play anybody. And I would tell them, Memphis is playing Mississippi State. There's a lot of things coming up here in 2021, and the excitement for these games is huge. And I'm excited about UCF playing Boise State as well. But just seeing these games that are coming up, and seeing that the American Athletic is not shying away from playing anybody, and just looking at Cincinnati's schedule and seeing at Indiana, at Notre Dame, not only are they playing 2 big games out of conference, but they're both on the road. And Luke Fickell's one of those coaches, like, I'll play anybody, give them to me. They'll go to UCLA if they have to. And I just, I think when you see the American and we talk about the pedigree of coaches, like you just brought, like what, I just kind of brought up there and you gave your thoughts on it, to talk about the pedigree of the coaches, the fact that they're always plucked every single year, the fact that guys are coming from the quote unquote Power 5 coming in, and that they're playing these Texas Techs and these Indianas and these Notre Dames. It really, to me, says, and they've played the Penn States of the world and so on and so forth in recent history. The American wants your best game, and they demand it. And for goodness sakes, South Florida, they got Florida coming up on the schedule. They've been willing to play anybody and everybody. So,
yeah, pretty much those are must-win games is what those are for the teams from the American. Those are the games that they have got to be up and be ready to play and use that experience of their coaches, to their betterment and to their advantage to win those football games. Because honestly, if you're playing them and you're not winning them, you're just playing right into the "I told you so" crowd.
Yeah.
Oh, I told you, you're just not as good as Florida Gators. There's just no way that you're as good as us. And honestly, maybe we're not, but let's get on the field and let's see. And I think that's the excitement part of it, is let's see how we measure up. Let's see where we're at before we start conference play. because conference play is always tough, no matter what in the American. Conference play is the hardest games because these coaches build that familiarity with each other. It's hard to win on the road in this conference. It's hard to win at home in this conference. Overall, you got to go on the road and win these games, though. If you're Cincinnati and you're going on the road to Notre Dame and you feel like you were really left out of the college football playoff this last year, that's a game you got to go beat Notre Dame. You got to go beat Indiana. You got to prove and show who you are, Luke Fickell. Honestly, you made the decision to stay where you're at Cincinnati instead of taking any of these other jobs. So it's time for you to step up, and it's time for you to win these football games. Otherwise, what are we doing here? Because we're trying to get up to this next level that break this glass ceiling, so to speak. And, UCF, you got to go out and beat Boise State. These are huge football games for your university, not only for the win, but for the money too. Yeah. So it's a huge deal for these teams to go out and get these wins from top to bottom.
Yeah, and I think that in the American Athletic Conference, it's not – I mean, it is individual teams trying to win, but this conference, I feel like everybody – like they're rooting for each other out of conference. You know what I mean? It's like, we need Cincinnati to go win at Notre Dame. We need South Florida to do something, to at least be competitive against Florida. Yeah. We need UCF to take care of Boise State. Like they all kind of look to each other. Like Tulsa looks at Tulane looks at SMU looks at Houston looks at Navy, because out of conference, they need to have that record, and they have had a good record, and then they've done some great things and big time bowl games against the Baylors and the Oklahomas and the Louisvilles and the so on, and the how they play against LSU to 8 at the end of the game and Auburn and whatnot. So I think that I think the entire American was watching Cincinnati when I was at the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl this year on January 1st going, you got to close out that game against Georgia. So this is a conference that beats up on each other, but I think the coaches in this conference understand they need each other out of conference.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just a fight for respect. And it started with 2017 UCF and McKenzie Milton and Shaquem Griffin and that special group of guys that they had on that team that took the Auburn team out at the end of the season, that went undefeated and just got completely ignored. I think at the end of the day, we've got to put 4 or 5 teams in our conference like that can put up that undefeated record or that can be 11-1 at the end of the season and be ranked, to get that final bit of respect for the conference that's going to make them say, hey, like we need to open up and include the American, which was the Big East anyway. It was the Big East anyway. So they already had a seat at the table. We, for money reasons, took it away from them. But on the field, the proof is there. You watch the film. Guz Malzahn said it in his presser. He said, I watched a half hour of film on that 2017 UCF team before we played them. And suddenly I was like, holy crap, what have we gotten ourselves into here? Basically, hey, this isn't going to be no cakewalk on January 1st. We better come out ready to play, or we're going to be choking on this bubble gum that I chew. And That's what ended up happening, because UCF had NFL guys all over the field. Yep. Traquan Smith is, star receiver on the Saints these days. Had a big game that day. McKenzie Milton's going to be, I've told you before, I think he's going to be a first rounder, second rounder. He's going to be an NFL guy after this season he has at FSU. I mean, that team really showed it, and that's where it all started. And I think there are plenty of teams in the American, the Cincinnatis, Memphis, Houston, all of them right down the line. They can all play with people, and they can all beat people. It's just a matter of getting it done and closing out the deal, which Cincy was unable to do against Georgia.
Yeah, and you bring that up, and I do want to give a special thanks before we go to a next point here. Cafe Cubal, Carvel DeWitt, Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory. You can go in Florida or any of the 50 states. They go to maandpaspopcorn.com and use the promo code DT20 if you're here in Central New York, and where we typically are at home in our studio. If you use the promo code DT20 online, you can pick it up in the store. So for in-store pickup or online delivery, all you have to do is go to maandpaspopcorn.com and use the promo code DT20. That's my personal code to get you 20% off. The Wildcat Sports Pub, Avicoli's, Honda City of Liverpool, Canine Camp, Dog Daycare, Millhouse Market, Chick-fil-A Cicero, Canine Campground Dog Boarding, and of course, Pizza Man. I want to thank you all for everything that you do as we're inside of the Cafe Cubal studios on the road, Florida in Focus. Jay, you brought him up. Before I let us go, I have to ask you about McKenzie Milton. Florida State has him. It's a bittersweet situation and scenario that he was up for a potential Heisman, and then he got disrespected, and then he got hurt. And if he wasn't at home, there's a chance that if they had to airlift him, he would have lost his leg. He could have had to have an amputation. This man is in a situation of, is he going to have both of his legs, to will he ever play again, to will he ever walk again, to I think he's going to come back and play, to wait, we're going to hold off, to let's find a quarterback and hope that he comes back, to 2 years go by and then he finally can come back and he says, this is Dylan Gabriel's team and it's not my team. We have been friends for a long time. It's not fair for me to take the job from him or even compete for something like that. What can you say about the McKenzie saga that once started with recruiting a kid from Hawaii, that turned into the starter, that turned into going undefeated, that turned into doing the unthinkable, that turned into a horrific injury, that turned into Kenny Walk, that turned into now he can, and he's coming back, but he's not coming back at UCF?
Yeah, man. And the part of that McKenzie Milton story that doesn't get mentioned enough is, as a freshman, Scott Frost puts him out there against Maryland, and he takes Maryland down to the wire, losing in overtime, but like kind of showed you who he was and kind of showed that he could get out of the pocket. Didn't really have the accuracy down the field yet, but if I'm going to talk about McKenzie Milton, the first thing I got to say is he's special.
Yeah.
He's a special kid. I think we've all said nothing but the best about him. Wish him absolutely nothing but the best at Florida State. They play Notre Dame opening night. I want to spend whatever I got to spend to be there. You might hear Kristen yell at me for that. But anyways, no. The 4 years he spent at UCF was a special time. What he did in 2017 and 2018, he put that team on his back. There's really no other way to say it. Some of the throws he made, the way he plays the game, it's reckless control. It's, you're like watching him and he gets out of the pocket and then he kind of like maybe sees somebody half an inch open and throws the ball up and you're like, no. And then it's, oh my God, did you see that? Dude, what did he just do? Yeah. That play he made in the Auburn game is one of the most special things I've ever seen, where he got out of the pocket, jukes a defender. So he's not looking downfield. Jukes a defender, gets to the middle of the field, finds a receiver, flicks the ball. I mean, he was about as Brett Favre as you could get. So has that special season, 2018. Everything's going great. He's making Josh Heupel look like a genius in his first year as a head coach, which is really the only season where everybody was in love with Josh Heupel too, toward the end of the year anyway. Suffers that injury on the road at South Florida, is right there by some of the best hospitals in the country there in Tampa. When it happened, I mean, it was like worst case scenario, man, because we were fighting. We were hoping to get that invite to the playoff after another championship win. When he went down, it was just one of the most awful things I've ever gone through as a fan, even just to think of what a special kid he was to the team, how much he brought to the table, how much of the reason he was that they were as good as they were in 2018, especially because they had lost a lot of talent from 2017. So when he went down, it was just horrific, man. It was just horrific. And to watch the journey that he's walked since then, he has not taken the word no from anybody. Yeah. Whether they told him he wasn't ever going to walk again, whether they told him he wasn't ever going to run again, whether they told him he wasn't going to play football again, he wasn't having any of it. His faith in God, which I know, you and me, we talk about God sometimes. His faith in God is second to nobody that I know, as far as he brings it up every day. Anytime you talk to him, anytime you've seen him on Twitter, he brings up his faith in God is what got him through it. Yeah. And if not for that, I mean, he wouldn't be at Florida State right now. He'd just be on the sidelines at UCF, and that would have been it. But he didn't take no for an answer, man. And now I'm so excited for him. I'm so excited for him as a fan of him personally. I just can't wait to see him get in front of however many people are going to be allowed at the Florida State game in September. I can't wait to be there to see him take the field and just scream my lungs out and getting choked up talking about it. I'm excited. I'm excited for him, man. I cannot wait for that day to be there and see him take the field and throw that first touchdown pass or even just throw the first pass. I can't wait, man.
I think I'm just excited to see him hand the ball off, just be there.
Yeah.
So I think the beauty of it is they start off the season against Notre Dame. And if McKenzie's under center, he's got Notre Dame first, he's got Florida last. And before they get into the postseason, he gets to play in the rivalry game. And who can say they played at UCF and they played in the rivalry game of Florida State and Florida. And, he also has a game in my birthday month of, Saturday, October 2nd. He will be out there and he'll be in Tallahassee hosting the Syracuse Orange. And that's a game that I'm circling. And I know that you're circling. And we talk about birthday time, I would think that should probably be our birthday gift to each other is October 2nd in Tallahassee.
Yeah, man, it's 4 hours from my doorstep up to Tallahassee, unless you got a private jet. So I'll definitely drive.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, I'll definitely drive up there and be there for that, man. We'll celebrate the birthdays, have a little pizza, and go check out KZ, man. Hopefully he's still healthy and everything goes as planned as far as him getting to the NFL, man. That would be the topper to the cake to see him finish his career at FSU, go on next spring to get drafted into the NFL. It'd be one of the greatest comeback stories ever, including Alex Smith. So I think that would be amazing if we can get up there and see him.
I got to ask you in closing here. We talk about McKenzie Milton and his adversity. You've gone through adversity. I've gone through adversity. We all have. People listening and watching, we all have. What is your advice to people that feel like whatever's going on personally or professionally, emotionally, socially, economically, physically, mentally, whatever it may be, spiritually, that they feel like is an insurmountable odd? What is your advice to them?
Everything's temporary. Pain is temporary. Your job is temporary. Your situation, whether you got little kids, they're going to be big kids one day. That's temporary. I tell myself that one all the time. Enjoy today. Look forward to tomorrow, but with a positive attitude. I think the greatest thing I can tell anybody is if you're going to go to work or if you're going to do anything, it's like Jim Valvano said, nothing great was accomplished without any enthusiasm. If you're not going to be enthusiastic, if you're not going to be excited to be at work or excited to be at home with your family or excited to do this or that, you're not going to do anything great. You're not going to accomplish anything. You've got to come in with enthusiasm, and you've got to be positive, and you've got to look forward with a positive attitude that brighter days are ahead and not behind. So no matter what you're going through, you got to just keep pushing, keep digging, and just stay positive. I think that's the number one thing that you could tell anybody is just to keep a positive attitude and don't get your head in the sand and be so defeated as to you miss the opportunity when it arises.
And is anything impossible?
No. No. If this is possible, that we're in Florida right now. And on our Zoom call, man, if this is possible for two guys who were just dicking around at Florida Tuskers practice 11 years ago to still be pals and still be hanging out and talking football and talking life, if this is possible, I believe in anything, man. Nothing is out of the reach if it's what you want.
There's no better way to conclude today than to end on that statement. There is nothing out of reach if it's really what you want. So awesome stuff. So many years ago, over a decade ago, hard to believe. And we have been friends this whole time because of friendship and because of how amazing you and Kristen are, I am an uncle to Carter, to Carly, and to Gracie. And Carter, my first niece or nephew of anything. You know, I mean, this all started with Carter. And I always tell people I've never been so emotional over somebody that I never got to meet. You know, and he has such a place in my heart, and so does Carly, and so does Gracie. So, I mean, to your parents who are incredible, to Kristen and to you who are always positive and in my corner, to Gracie and Carly that call me Uncle Dan and remember my face and my voice, which means the absolute world to me. You speak so much truth, Jay. There is nothing impossible in this world. If you want something, then none of it's impossible. You know, you'll always go after what you want. They say people are like magnets, right? If things are meant to happen, it just happens. And you and I, our friendship started on a field, by the old Citrus Bowl, and it has turned into brothers. It's turned into true family, and it's made me one of the proudest uncles that can ever touch this planet. So I can't thank you, Gracie, Carly, Carter, or Kristen enough in my life that goes well beyond the world of sports.
Yeah, man, absolutely. We love Uncle Dan. We think the world of you, man. And it's like I've told you a million times, you taught me how to be a better friend. And it's just awesome to think that we've been together this long and still kicking in this business that I always tell people it's all about relationships, man. It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah, it is all about how you treat people. And, it will always come back full circle, either in a great way or in a not so great way. But the way that you and I treat people, I only see us excelling. We're only going to go up from here. I know that, when good people are good to each other, you eventually hit that incline. And like I was told a long time ago, you better be ready because you're going to go to sleep one night. You're going to wake up and this thing is going to be huge. And I hope that you're prepared for it. So, I already feel successful being an uncle. I feel successful being your friend and your brother. And I feel successful with the parents and the grandparents I have and the people that love me and spend their time with me. So my success has already been completed, but I am just getting started.
Absolutely, man. It's only the beginning.
Okay. Well, thank you as always for everything, for sharing Florida. Now let's get off this call and go swimming.
Let's go.
We'll talk with you all soon.